Good morning. Good morning. This is February 6th, 2022. My name is Douglas Griffin. This is my Sunday school class. In my class, we're going through the book of Genesis. We're almost done. We're starting chapter 49 today. I think there's only 51 chapters. We're almost done with Genesis. It's been almost 2 years. Um, uh, in our last episode, I like to refer to this as our attempt to present the unbiased words, my attempt to present the unbiased word of God by reading it verse by verse by verse by verse and examining everything in context. Uh, because a lot of times we've seen movies or Sunday school lessons or like um, we've heard stories. There's a way that the Bible's been presented that sometimes I think inadvertently takes a story out of context and we don't hear it the right way. But when you read things in context, then you really understand what the Bible is talking about, and you have a more unbiased view because you're just comparing scripture to scripture. So, in the beginning of Genesis chapter 49, verse 1, it says, Jacob called his sons and said, gather together that I may tell you what shall befall you in the last days. So, let's back up for people like, who, Jacob? Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. We've all heard of them. Jacob has 12 sons. His favorite one was obviously son number 11, Joseph. And that bothered his brother so much that they sold Joseph off into slavery, sent him off to Egypt, got rid of him. Then as God would have it, because God makes everything come around, these same brothers had to face Joseph years later. It turns out Joseph has risen in Egypt, and uh, God had worked it out so just at the time of famine, Joseph would be in place to save his brothers. So where they had intended it for this dastardly thing, right? Dastardly, that's an old word. Evil thing. Uh, God turned it around, which is what he does. When we dedicate ourselves to God, he turns around any bad thing. He can redeem it. There's nothing God cannot redeem. In fact, the name of this lesson is Fall and Redemption, and we'll be discussing why sometimes there's fall and why sometimes there's redemption. That part depends on us because the offer for redemption is always there. But whether we take him up on that offer and we are redeemed, or whether we continue our fall, that's up to us. Um, so God redeemed the situation, and Joseph rescued his brothers during this time of famine. So now they've been there 17 years in Egypt. They were really supposed to be there for 5 because the famine was over after 5 years, so they could have gone back to Canaan. But they stayed there because Joseph had arranged such nice living quarters for them in Goshen. It was so beautiful, it was so wonderful that they're just kind of there. But Jacob wants to go back home. Genesis, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, their father, he wants to go back. And he was aware that he's about to die. So he is just, last week, he's just presented um, some blessings to Joseph's kids and has decided that Joseph's going to get the double portion. The double portion goes to the firstborn son, son number 1. He gets a double portion, not twice as much as the other brothers. I guess so, but he gets 2 portions. Once you divide up the land, he gets 2 portions so that if something ever happens to the other brothers, he can take in their families. If nothing happens, then he's just got a lot of land. But if something does happen, he has to have enough land to take in the wives and the children of his brothers. So Jacob has decided to give in that double portion to son number 11. And he will go over why. So he's given, so in order to do that, Joseph has 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. Manasseh is the oldest. And so he says, I'm going to adopt them. And so that way you'll have 2 portions. That, of course, squeezes somebody out. Um, and then right after he adopts them, that's what he did last week, Joseph's 2 sons, he now says, now everybody coming in, I'm going to bless everybody. So, gather together that I may tell you what shall befall you in the last days. And by the last days, he means, because this phrase in the last days comes up many times, he means in the last days when you finally take back the land in Canaan, because that's what God has promised him, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He promised Abraham and his descendants that they would take Canaan, which is modern day Israel today. I don't know why I pointed over there like Israel's over there. Modern day Israel. So right now they own nothing other than a little land in Shechem. They don't really own anything. So, but he can see what's going to happen hundreds of years from now when they finally do take the land back. Let me tell you and that's what he means by the last days. Every time someone uses the last days in the Bible, you have to figure what do they mean, the last days. The last days before we're taken into bondage, the last days before we come out of bondage, the last days before Messiah shows up, or the last days before Jesus comes back. They mean different things. And a misunderstanding of that causes people to interpret scriptures incorrectly. So there is no Messiah so far for Jacob. There's just Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He's not saying, in the days once Jesus returned, there's no Jesus in his mind. And then when he comes back to America, there's no America. That's not what he's talking about. Okay. So he says, gather together and hear. This is verse 2. You sons of Jacob, and listen to Israel, your father. And he uses his two names because he's calling them sons of Jacob, referring to who he was when he had them. And then he uses the new name that God gave him, Israel, referring to the promises that will come. So I'm going to refer back to your birth, who you were when you were born, because I was Jacob then and I made mistakes. I don't know that he thinks he made mistakes, and then Israel, which is the fulfillment of the promise when Canaan becomes Israel. So first he talks to Reuben. He's going to kind of go in order. He doesn't go in order. I don't know what order is in his head, but he tries to go in order. Anyway, he starts with the oldest son. Genesis chapter 49, verse 3. And he says, Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might and the beginning of my strength. So the firstborn always got more attention and more, you're the first, and they don't even know there's going to be more. So you're the one that God gave me, right? The excellency of dignity and the excellency of power. Now, I know he's saying that to him, but that's not what was happening when Reuben was born. That's not how he felt about him when he was born. If you go back to Genesis chapter 29, verse 32, it says, so Leah conceived and bore a son. So just reminding us that at this point, Jacob has two wives simultaneously. He thought he was marrying the younger one, Rachel, but his father fooled him and gave him Leah, the father-in-law, Laban. So the next day he marries Rachel. So now he's got simultaneously two wives, although one is a day older in marriage than the other. Literally it was like, well, it was 7 days later because he said, fulfill your week. Because the wedding feast was a week long. So after 7 days, on day 8, he marries Rachel. And he goes back and forth between the two wives. Leah's the first one to conceive, the one that he didn't want, the one that he's angry at because I was deceived. And it says, so Leah conceived and bore a son. This is Genesis chapter 29. And she called his name Reuben, which means, behold, look, a son, ha. And it's really, she's kind of throwing this in Rachel's face. Ha, look, I got a son. You didn't get nothing. Seriously. For she said, the Lord has surely looked upon my affliction. Now, therefore, my husband will love me. So she's telling the son, you're here so that my husband will finally love me. That you are God's proof that God will now finally love me. The Lord has looked at my affliction. He's seen how horrible I've been treated. And Jacob did treat her really badly because he thought he was Egypt. Now, it turned out Leah was in God's plans. And the things that we don't understand are in God's plan, we despise those things because we think that's a terrible thing. I got moved to this job over there, and we're bitter the whole time. I got transferred to this classroom, or I had to take this apartment, or I had to settle for that car. We're bitter, not understanding God's in control of everything. So if God allows that to happen, then there's some redemption to come from that. Something good will come from that if God's allowing it to happen. But as long as you're angry about it, you're not going to see it. And so that's how he's treating Leah. All right. Right? So she says, God has seen how he's treated me. So therefore, my husband will love me now. And that's the thing put on Reuben. You are here so that my husband will love me. Now, it doesn't work. And so Reuben kind of grows up knowing his purpose and knowing that he hasn't fulfilled it. Now, here's the truth. It wasn't, she was wrong. Reuben had another purpose. And sometimes your parents can put a purpose on you. You're here for this reason. And it can affect you. And your parents are doing it on purpose. They believe it. You're here. This is God put you on earth to do this. And when you're not able to do that, you feel like a failure. Instead of redemption coming, because we can redeem that error. Redemption means you're going to go a different way. You're going to redeem that error and change it around and put it how God really intended it, right? So at some point we have to say, I think my parents were wrong. They were very well intentioned. But here's what I can tell my purpose is. Here's who I am. Or you can continue to go after the thing that God didn't say, that your parents mistakenly said, and never turn and go the other way and then just feel bad. I'm still trying to fulfill whatever it is was placed on you. And that's what Reuben tries to do, doesn't work. In Genesis chapter 35, because the choice is fall or redemption, and the choice is ours. It's not up to God. It's ours. He always offers us redemption. Genesis 35, verse 18 says, and so it was as her soul was departing, for she died. Now, who are we talking about? We're talking about Rachel now. Rachel was the first wife. Jacob ended up having 4 wives. Rachel's the first one to die. And this is the one that he's focused on the whole time. And interesting enough, she's the first one to die. And I will tell you, God will take away your Rachels. If you're too focused and you're not even listening to God, God's trying to point you toward this other direction. Look, I've given Leah 6 sons, and Rachel hasn't had any yet. And you're still not seeing that. But if we're too focused on our Rachels, God has to remove them from our lives because we can't see God anymore. So it says that as her soul was departing, for she died, that she called his name. Now she's finally had Joseph. Rachel's finally had Joseph, and now she's about to have her second son. It's still 6-2 as far as Leah is concerned. But she's finally having a second son. But she calls his name Ben-Oni, which means the son of my pain. But his father called him Ben-Chamin, which means the son of my right hand. And that is one of the most auspicious places you can place a son. He's the son. God told Jesus to sit on his right hand. Sit at his right hand. I keep saying on his right hand, like he's sitting on his right hand. Get off my hand, Jesus. At his right hand. And that's the seat of power. That's your second in command, And so he's saying, I'm giving him this place of honor. He is the son of my right hand. Now, this is son number 12. So he's paying all this attention to son number 11 and 12, and he's ignoring the other 10. And Reuben can't take it anymore. At this point, Reuben snaps. In the next couple of verses, it says, Then Israel, Jacob, journeyed and pitched his tent beyond the Tower of Eder. And it happened when Israel dwelt in that land that Reuben went and lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine. So Reuben snaps at this point. He's put up with Joseph. Reuben's supposed to be the firstborn. Reuben's purpose in life, he feels like it has not been fulfilled. And um, but at least he'll be second in line, right? Okay, he loves him some Joseph, but I'm next. And then, uh, hey, you guys, Dottie and Susan, and all the rest. Um, he feels like, okay, maybe I'm not Joseph, but I'm next. And then when Benjamin's born, and he says, no, he's my right hand. Reuben snaps. It's right after that. They put it purposely just a verse or two later that, well, I'll go sleep with, Rachel's not here. I'll sleep with her maid. I'll be a man. I'll show my father. I'll sleep with my stepmother uh, because he feels like that's his only play. Now that's his choice. I'm not justifying it like, oh, that's a good thing. You have to decide. I'm going to be what God wants me to be. Even if I'm disappointing my parents, I'm not disappointing God. So somewhere you have to readjust. But he's still trying to get back at his father. I'll sleep with one of your wives, Daddy, and show you Rachel's gone. I'll sleep with her. It's interesting that he picks Rachel's maid. Just, I'll sleep with her. So there. Well, this doesn't go over well. So Israel hears about it, and your answer to do something in retaliation is not redemption, right? That's not. You're not redeeming. You're digging your grave deeper. You're falling because either we're going to redeem and go up, or we're going to fall and go down. So, Reuben is now, which probably is okay with him. Well, no, it wasn't okay with him. We see that it wasn't okay because I'm thinking he's at odds with his dad. His father hears about it. His father doesn't say anything, but now there's this enmity between them, right? And now Reuben's spending the rest of his time trying to make up to his dad this horrible thing that he did. Again, making up to dad, not God. Not, and sometimes we'll focus on that parent who was not perfect. Our parents aren't perfect. They make mistakes. And instead of focusing on that parent, and I will make you love me. You have to make God love you, and because God says, if you make your ways right with me, then I'll make your enemies to be at peace with you. I'll do everything else. You make your ways right with me, and that person who's bothering, the person's after you, I will subdue them, right? So Reuben's not focusing on God; he's focusing on Jacob. How can I make Jacob better? In fact, in Genesis chapter 37. Once the brothers all attack Joseph, right? Reuben has a plan. I'm going to rescue Joseph because they throw Joseph in a pit. And Reuben says, in fact, Reuben's the one that says, let's not kill him. Let's throw him in the pit. And then he's thinking, I'll come back later when they're all asleep and I'll take him out of the pit and I'll bring him home and then Daddy will love me. Well, while he's gone, they decide to sell him off to Egypt. And when he comes back, the pit is empty. And it says in Genesis 37, verse 30 says, and he returned to his brothers and said, the lad is no more, because he doesn't know that they'd sold him off to Egypt. Where shall I go? Now, why does he make it about him? Not the lad is no more, let's go find him. The lad is no more. Now, what am I going to do? Because I was supposed to have been watching him. This was my way to make amends with my father. And now I've lost Joseph, and so where am I going to go? I can't go back home. Like he had no plan. The brothers came up with a plan. Okay, look, we will bloody the coat. We'll put blood on it, Joseph's famous coat, and then we'll take it back to Jacob, and we'll trick him into thinking that an animal killed him, and so you can come back. Okay, all right. But Reuben. So he starts off by saying, Reuben, you're the beginning of my strength, which is ironic because he totally ignored Reuben, right? Reuben spends his whole life trying to live up to what his mother says, And again, the mother is not purposely putting some curse on Reuben by saying, "You're the one who's going to reunite with dad." Parents believe the best for their kids, but sometimes they'll say, "You're going to be an astronaut," or "You're going to be a senator." And then when that doesn't happen, you spend your time, "Oh, I didn't live up to what my," but that's not what God had intended, right? So uh, so he's saying to Reuben, "You are the beginning of my strength," but he treated him the opposite, actually. And he got two different messages from his mother. The father saying, "You're nothing to me," and the mother saying, "You're everything. You're here to win the father back." And so Reuben is like, "Well, I'm ignored by my daddy, and but my mother thinks that I'm the savior." So he says to him, this is what Jacob says to him in his blessing: "You're unstable as water," which was true because he had two different personalities. He didn't know what he was going to do. Am I trying to be the man, or am I scared? Because he would both. Oh my God, Dad's going to be so mad at me because Joseph's not. I'll sleep with his I'll sleep with his wife, and I'll show him. So he's both. He's trying to do both. I'm trying to fulfill what my mother thinks, and yet I'm humbled and right. And we can make ourselves crazy with for focusing on something that our parents, or way our parent looked at us, instead of understanding how God looks at us. So there could be redemption of the error, or we can continue the error and compound it. So he says to him, "You're unstable as water," which was true. "You shall not excel because you went up to your father's bed." Now this is what he blames it on. Because you went up to your father's bed, then you defiled it, which is a truth. His choice was, I'm going to get back at my dad, or I'm going to forgive my dad. And listen, the people you haven't forgiven, they still own you. They still own us if we're still angry about this and angry about that. We are now making decisions out of our anger. And any decision we make out of our anger and unforgiveness leads us to the fall. So, yeah, you went up to your father's bed and defiled it because that you're getting back at me instead of forgiving me. Now, this is not, I'm putting these words in Jacob's mouth, but this is what he's doing. I could either forgive my father for ignoring me, or I can get back at him, but that messed you up. That just sets you on this bad path. So you went up to your father's bed, you defiled it. It says he went up to my couch, like he tells he went, he got in my bed with my wife. So here's so that was Jacob's reason for, I'm going to give Joseph then the double portion instead of Reuben. And which it says in First Chronicles chapter 5, "Now the sons of Reuben, the firstborn of Israel, he was indeed the firstborn, but because he defiled his father's bed, his birthright was given to the sons of Joseph." So but here's what he continued to do, Reuben continued to do. And again, redemption can come at any point, but out of his anger and feeling slighted, I should have gotten the firstborn. And we can feel cheated out of something, but a human can't cheat us out of what God has for us. So, um, oh, I was slight. That person should have paid me more, or that person should have promoted me, or that person should have recognized whatever the slight is. We can still be bitter about that, or we can say, "But God has something else for me. God has something. Isn't on vacation. This is our choice, right?" So, uh, so he's just still stayed bitter. She still stayed. The tribe of Reuben still felt like they were cheated and never said, "So what does God have for us? Even though you may not have given me what I deserve, God is going to give me something. God has something for me." So when Korah rebelled against Levi, God promoted Levi, and we'll get into why. God promotes Levi. Um, the sons of Korah, who are related to Levi, they're also Levites, but Levi had three sons, and the middle son is who got the best job. But the other sons, they got jobs too. So all three sons of Levi all got jobs in the temple and the tabernacle. They were all made priests and all that. But the sons of Korah, the, the youngest sons, they felt like they wanted more. Instead of being happy in what they were given, and I've been given this, I'm going to make this the best. And I should have had that. So now Korah, the son of Issachar, the son of Kohath, the son of Levi, with Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eliab, and the sons of Peleth. Okay, so they're all going to rebel, right? They're going to rebel. They're part of it, but they're like, why is Aaron getting to do everything and we don't? So they're going to rebel and they're going to get punished. Who joins in with their rebellion? The sons of Reuben. So in Numbers chapter 16, verses 1 and verse 3, it says the sons of Reuben said, yeah. Now, what does sons of Reuben have to do with this? Why is Reuben's family joining in this little internal squabble between the sons of Levi over who gets to be priest over the temple? But Reuben and them, they're going to join in with anybody who feels slighted. Oh, yeah, he did that to you. Let me tell you what they did to me. And so they join in. And they took men and they gathered together against Moses and against Aaron and said to them, you take too much upon yourselves, for all the congregation is holy, every one of them, and the Lord is among them. Why then do you exalt yourselves above the assembly of the Lord? Now, they didn't exalt themselves. God gave them that exalted. But he gave everybody an assignment. God gives everybody an assignment. We can't look within and be at somebody one person's assignment. So they join in, as you know, with the sons of Korah. Reuben does, not all of Reuben, but a large part of them. And the earth opens up and swallows them. And God says, okay, I've made my decision. In Numbers chapter 32, when they then are ready to start to go into the land, and finally go into Canaan land, into the promised land, it says, verse 2 says, the children of Gad and the children of Reuben came and spoke to Moses and to Eleazar the priest and to the leaders of the congregation, saying in verse 5, therefore, they said, if we have found favor in your sight, let this land be given to your servants as a possession, and do not take us over the Jordan. Again, we don't want to have anything to do with you. You guys go over the Jordan. We're going to stay here on this land. And that's, again, part of the psyche of I've been cheated out of what, so I'm going to separate myself. Thinking that man can cheat you out of what God has for you. He cannot. In the theology that says the devil and God are equal, and sometimes the devil wins, if you believe that, then yes, you can be bitter and angry. You let the devil come in and take this, and look what the devil's done, and the devil's won, and you can feel cheated. In the theology that says God is over everything, which is what he says in the Bible, I'm over everything, then you realize this person can't cheat me. God has something for me. So even though they're messing up, God will deal with them, but God still has something for me. If you don't believe that, then you stay angry. And so Reuben just made choice after choice after choice. I'm going to get back at him. I'm going to get back at my dad, the tribe of Reuben. I'm going to just stayed on the outside. So you're continuing the fall. You're not seeking redemption. All right. So, and he tells them, this is what's going to happen to you. And even though Jacob was the one that made the original mistake, that's not our excuse. Well, they messed up. My parents treated me bad, and so no. God's going to look at us and judge us about what do we do with our circumstances. For example, he goes on to the next son. There's Simeon and Levi. Simeon and Levi are brothers. He says you're connected. Now, Simeon is born. He's the second son of Leah. It says, because the Lord has heard that I am unloved. That's why I'm naming him Simeon. He's therefore given me this son also and called his name Simeon, which means the Lord has heard. And so you're the answer. You are God's voice on earth. The Lord's heard, and here's his answer, that I'm still unloved. So you are you're the manifestation of God's anger at how angry God is at what is happening with me. Reuben was, you will make my father, your father love me, which he never could. So he feels defeated. But Simeon, God has heard, and you're his answer. You're the example of his rage. And let me tell you, Simeon stayed angry his whole life. But he says, Simeon and Levi, you are brothers, because Simeon and Levi were very close. And when Levi was born, that's son number 3, he says, now this time my husband will become attached to me because I have borne him 3 sons. Therefore his name is called Levi, which means the reconciler, the attached. That's your job, is to reconcile things. to be the go-between. And surprisingly, well, not I guess not surprising, Levi ends up fulfilling that, and Simeon in fulfilling and being just anger man his whole life. Um, so he says they are brothers. Instruments of cruelty are in their dwelling place. Now it came to pass on the third day when they were okay. So in Genesis chapter 34, and we've gone over this. I just want to, but I'm looking at it from the point of view of, can you change your destiny, or can you just because bad things have happened to us, do you believe that you can change it, or do you believe that you're stuck with it? So Simeon and Levi together, when they found out that their sister had been um, raped, basically, they planned this revenge, and they went in and they killed all the men in their town. We It's clear that Simeon was leading it, because later when Joseph asked for, I need one brother to stay behind, they all voted for Simeon. You stay behind because you're crazy. So Simeon was the leader of that, but Levi went right along with him. Is there redemption for that? So he says, instruments of cruelty are their dwelling place. In Genesis 49, this is Jacob praying over his sons. Let not my soul enter their counsel. Let not my honor be united to their sin. Like, I don't even want to be part of them, because they're just so evil together. For in their anger they slew a man, and in their self-will they hamstrung an ox. So apparently they also killed an ox, which he's saying that's even just as bad as killing a man. We could have eaten that ox. Cursed be their anger, for it is fierce, and their wrath, for it is cool. I will divide them in Jacob. So let's look at what happened with Levi. It's a very interesting story, and maybe the only one I have time to tell. Because so can you redeem yourself? This is when you hear these things about yourself, and whether your parents have said things that are too good and have gotten your head pumped up and going around the rest of it, or whether they've said, you're just a no good, whatever they've said, do we have to stay victim to what our parents have said to us, or what some boss or what some person has said to us, or can that be redeemed? Can we learn to hear or see ourselves the way God sees us? So here's what happens with Levi. In Exodus chapter 32, Moses comes down the mountain with the Ten Commandments, and he sees what's going on. Moses has been in the mountain too long. He took too long. And sometimes that's how we are. God's taking too long, so now I'm going to go and act up. And so when he comes down, they've made a calf and they're dancing